So this is one of our categories we do every Monday. The team that changed my mind is Oregon, because I went into the weekend expecting angry Oregon, expecting here we go, Oregon. It was one of my best bets on Bets of the North on Friday morning with T-Shoe was Oregon -19, -20, -21. And that is not at all what happened. We talked about it a little bit as it was finishing up on Saturday night, Bill, which is why we want to start with it here. Number one, I'm not so sure that Boise isn't better than Oregon. Rewatching that whole game, I just thought to myself, well, I don't know. These teams are the same. What is the difference between a team that a lot of people picked to win the national championship and a team that is trying to be the playoff team in the group of five? So good luck to the 5 seed in the playoff if you're getting Boise State and Ashton Genty in the first round. But there wasn't a ton, Bill, about Oregon that I thought, well, okay, well, like that's the difference between a team like Oregon and a team like Boise. They clearly made some big plays. Evan Stewart made some big plays. Tez Johnson had a huge punt return that swung the game. But it was surprisingly evenly matched to me in a game that was a 3-touchdown spread and is the power conference of all power conference teams and a group of 5 team. Like, it's fluky at all to me that Boise was in that game. I'm not so sure as Oregon scored 2 special teams touchdowns. I'm not sure it didn't feel fluky that Oregon won.
It kind of did feel fluky that Oregon won to me. Like, you can't, 2 special teams touchdowns are not in any way reliable. Good for the Ducks for finding them in a game where they desperately needed them. But that to me looked like an evenly matched game as well. And I always look, I think the best barometer of that is on the line of scrimmage, right? And if Oregon's offensive line is not pushing around Boise the way you think they should, and then Boise is able to find what it did running the ball. Now that comes with Ashton Genty, right? Like a normal running back maybe wouldn't have found as much against Oregon as Ashton did, but Ashton Genty is very good. Yeah. But I wanted to see Oregon, and frankly, the defensive front was fine against Idaho, but that's not a great barometer. I wanted to see Oregon come out in this game against Boise and kind of just own the line. And it didn't on either side of the ball. And maybe that is a little more forgivable defensively when you are facing Ashton Genty, excuse me. But I thought that was a pretty poor showing for Oregon's offensive line, which is, I kind of feel like the thing that people thought was maybe, I don't know, most reliable for Oregon coming into the season. Like if you're changing a quarterback and you're changing over so much at the skill positions, with those 2 tackles coming back and another offensive line starter, I think people were assuming that Oregon might be able to lean on its offensive line at the start of the year. And clearly that's not been the case through 2 games.
You mentioned this. Is it Matthew Bedford, the Oregon guard who has not played for the first 2 games and is sorely missed? The PFF grades for guards, I looked at, it went to 156 power conference guards who have played the requisite amount of snaps through the first 2 games. Oregon's 2 primary guards are ranked 131st and 155th out of 156 guards. Their center is 69th out of 72. And they are mixing and matching. They are searching. Dan Lanning talked about that after the game. He said, we like to rotate on the offensive line. This is a thing we sometimes do. But there's a difference between rotating and desperately searching for what might work. And at the moment, nothing is working inside. There were pressures that came, guys just getting beat, guys just absolutely getting beat. I think they had 4 penalties on the offensive line. Like, it is a real problem. The tackles are still pretty good. Johnny Cornelius, that's the guy you like best, right? At right tackle, that's your guy?
Yeah. They're both good, but yeah.
Josh Connolly gave up a sack on like the 3rd play of the game where he kind of tried to cut the edge and the guy like just completely whiffed and just gave up a sack. Dylan Gabriel, they gave up sacks on consecutive plays to a safety where they did not adjust their protection and did not recognize what was coming. And Boise was like, well, I don't know, let's do that again. And it worked twice in a row. There was another one where they had the right guard was supposed to, what's it called, Landis, when you have the left tackle lined up right in front of the edge guy, but then the left tackle blocks down and the right guard is supposed to pull around and take the edge guy? What's that called? Kind of
like a fold block?
Okay. It didn't work.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's take an interior guy where they are struggling and try to get him out to the edge rusher before he and didn't even come close to working. Like just absolute failures repeatedly. And I think they gave up. They gave up 5 sacks all of last year, and they gave up 4 sacks against Boise? Is that the stat?
The stat. So they gave up 5 last year. They've given up 7 so far this year. If we went up by a game, it's 3.5 per game this year. Last year, it was 0.36 per game. Tackles for loss last year, they allowed 3.1 per game. This year, they've allowed 6.5 per game. And I've got one more stat for you. Oregon last year was number 4 in the country in an offensive, like front 7 havoc rate, which is basically like how well or how good are you at limiting tackles for loss and sacks and just plays in your backfield generally. They were number 4 in the country last year, currently number 101 in the country.
This is their defensive line causing havoc. They're not having it. Oh, giving up havoc.
This is giving up havoc. Yes.
Okay. Because we're talking about both sides of the line here. It's like try to fix Oregon, right? Mm-hmm. And they have Oregon State this week, and it's like, hey, you know what Oregon State wants to do? Beat their rival all the time, but also beat their rival after their conference imploded and Oregon State was left floating.
Yeah.
Their defensive tackles, I thought, played pretty well. Derek Harmon had a bad blow to the head on the quarterback penalty that like was really a problem early, but he got reliable penetration. Jamari Caldwell, another transfer, got pretty reliable penetration. They got after the quarterback inside. There were times when Boise like max protected and was able to run guys deep and hit a couple throws.
Yeah.
Boise is really good. Boise is, I mean, I was not on the bandwagon because I was kind of searching, Fresno State. Boise's the playoff team in the group of 5, right? I mean, like they have to go win the Mountain West, but like, I mean, Genty's going to get them a lot of attention, but they're legitimately good. They do a lot right. They hung right with Oregon. So I did think like there were at times that Oregon defensively made plays when they needed to. Jordan Birch at linebacker, I thought like had a pretty good game and made some plays. Jabbar Muhammad gave up a thing here or there, but also then in some one-on-one coverage was really good. So I think you can see like the defense getting there a little bit when it needs to. This interior offensive line thing, and they have a guy coming back. And when that guy gets healthy, when Bedford gets healthy, it's going to make a huge difference. But it is like a gigantic shift and a gigantic issue that makes them kind of not able to do what they want to do offensively right now, and they need to solve it.
Yeah, I think Bedford coming back will help some, but then they're just going to put one of those guards that aren't playing very well at center, and I think that's still a problem.
Okay.
So it'll be a little better, I think. And also, by the way, to go back to a point you made earlier, we like to rotate on the offensive line is something coaches say when they don't have 5 good offensive linemen. So that's not a philosophical choice by Dan Lanning. That's a we don't know what we're doing statement from Dan Lanning. So I'm not out on Oregon's defensive front 7. I think Ashton Jeanty is very good, and he's going to get his. So like I'm willing to give a little bit of a benefit of a doubt there. We'll see when they play Oregon State this week, because Oregon State wants to line up and run it at you too. So if they come out of another game where they look a little soft against the run, then maybe I'll be concerned. It's all about the offensive line for me. It's 2 things. It's the offensive line, and this offense is not very explosive at the moment. They're like 50% off the pace of where they were last year in terms of explosive plays 2 games into the season. They're not scoring a lot. They have 6 touchdowns in 2 games, which maybe a lot of teams would love to have 6 touchdowns in 2 games. Oregon probably would prefer to have about 12 touchdowns in 2 games, given the way they want to operate. So there are a lot of issues with this offense, I think. It starts up front, but there are issues in other places as well that they got to get figured out.
And it's one of those things, like you can't have the thing that's like, well, I didn't criticize them, but last year it's like, they're just so dink and dunk. It's like, I don't know how good Bo Nix is going to be in the NFL. And then, by the way, he got to Denver and like dinked and dunked and like it didn't go so well. But they were really efficient last year, right? And now listen, Bo Nix, and I was double checking the big plays. I think he was still like 26 of 51 on passes of 20 yards or more last year. They were still at times, they would kill you with Troy Franklin and those guys. They are really reliant on the big play right now because there is not the efficiency. So Evan Stewart is out there making fools out of people on big plays a couple times a game, and Dylan Gabriel will drop it in your bucket. But like this is instead of being a machine right now for Oregon, which is why I almost thought they looked more like the underdog team, right? Because they were all about big plays. Evan Stewart is incredibly talented, and Dylan Gabriel, as a veteran quarterback, knows how to take advantage when his guy gets open deep. He didn't hit him every time, but he hit him enough. but 2 special team scores, 2 big plays, but like the click, the metronome like efficiency that they were all about last year, even inside some of their run game, it works when Jordan James gets stopped and bounces on his own, but there is just not a lot. I even thought they converted like a really important short yardage play that basically allowed them to go win the game. And it was like Terrence Ferguson, our guy at tight end, came up and faked like he was going under center, then went back into an H-back spot, then ran like a little route behind the line of scrimmage, and they flipped it to him, and he got it by a foot on 3rd and 1, right? Like it was like they ran a hook and ladder at the line of scrimmage to try to be something that got nothing. Like they were going in their bag because like the reliability of we're going to just lean on you and tempo you and efficiency you, like that is not there right now.
No, it's not. That fake center sneak, then release him into the flat play, by the way, is like the play du jour in college football. I feel like I saw it like 5. I think I saw it like 5 times last week. Yeah. So that's probably part of the reason why Boise wasn't terribly caught off guard by it, because they were probably on alert for that after teams used, like Akron tried to use it against Ohio State. I think it actually worked. So that's like a new thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Trayshawn Holden had like a thing where he got shoved out of bounds and they got up and shoved the guy back and got a penalty. Like there was just like they didn't look like a national championship caliber team. And the thing that looks like it is individual elite players who can make plays kind of on their own, but team wide as a system, from a coaching standpoint, it's not there right now, and it is enough of a thing. A couple bad angles at times, like that. You know, I'm just looking at my notes here. It's like there was a play where Genty like ran wild, like literally untouched through a perfectly blocked hole on the right side. It's like anybody could have gotten through that. And then there are other ones where it's like he breaks a tackle in the backfield that could have been a 3-yard loss. Now it's a 20-yard gain. But he had another one where there were like 7 guys in the box and the safeties came up and took a couple bad angles, right? And then it's like, okay, well, like you can't let that stuff happen. So Derek Harmon really made a difference, I think, at times. Like again, they with Caldwell's from Houston, right? Is that right? And Harmon's from Michigan State, and like still Uyunglele, and like they have some really good guys up front that did make a difference. Yeah, but they've got to. It's one of those things. Week 1 is week 1, and I know they moved the ball in week 1 and had little things here and there that prevented them from putting up a big score. But like Boise's good, but they did not exert their will, and it was enough that made me wonder, like, not that they won't ever do it, but like they have some strides to make before they can. And it really starts. I don't know, like I wouldn't say that it's only the interior of the offensive line, but it's like they have to get that fixed before anything else is going to work.
Yeah, I think it's predominantly the interior of the offensive line. They have to, and I don't know, I don't know what the ceiling is there. It's probably not all that high, if I'm being perfectly honest. Because they lost Jackson Powers Johnson, who was the best center in the country last year, and sometimes those shoes are hard to fill.
So it's one of those things, like we're kind of joking about it while we're doing this Saturday show. It's like, oh, Oregon's going to lose to Boise. And then you watch it, it's like, man, I think Oregon should have lost to Boise. So again, it would not have been the worst loss of the weekend. Boise is significantly better than Northern Illinois. We talked about Notre Dame a lot on Saturday night. So like, we're coming back. They found a way. You get credit for that. 2-0 matters, but when you're talking about a team with national championship goals, there are real things they need to work out. And here's the thing, like if they keep playing like this, then Ohio State at home is going to be a problem, and road trips to places like Michigan and Wisconsin are going to be a problem, because if you're not efficient in your own place, it's going to be hard to be efficient in Camp Randall. It's going to be hard to be efficient in the Big House. And now you're relying on only big plays against teams that have a better chance to match you athletically. And now that's a formula that is not a formula I think Oregon wants to get into. So,
no.
Okay. No.